Hello, everyone. Today we have another early morning podcast episode for you. Today we are having a discussion.
Yes.
A little bit different. We haven't had one in...
I guess really since the $2 bill.
$2 bill. I mean, that was, even then, that was more of
a book
discussion
movie review. Yeah.
Yes, this is our first really total discussion podcast episode.
Yeah, this is our step in becoming more like the news, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit, but so yeah, I think Ethan's right. This is more journalistic in pursuit. This episode is, because we actually went out and did some events before this in preparation for this video, and we don't normally do that. I guess besides dedicating time to read the book. Yeah. But so this past week, me and Ethan both participated in campaigning for our local election, the Clerks of Court court race for Clerk County, Virginia. And me and Ethan both know the candidates. We both had the candidates on the podcast. So it just made sense for us to work for each of the different candidates. And me and Ethan both know the different candidates separately, personally. Separately. Yes. So we also support the candidates ourselves. But we thought it'd be interesting to both go out and see our different experiences campaigning.
Yes. Just for full disclosure, Luke is a cousin of Phil, and Phil Hawks, candidate for the Clerk of Court, and my father knows Gerald Goad, Clerk of Court, from a previous career of his. So I just wanted to be fully transparent in that, and that I helped with Gerald's campaign and Luke helped with Phil's campaign. Yeah. And despite our personal political differences,
because we both did have personal stakes in the race.
Yes. Despite those, we still aim for the podcast to be a politically neutral media source.
Yeah, absolutely. We just really today want to discuss our experiences polling. Yeah. And me and Ethan talked about, I think I talked about it, and then Ethan talked about it, and then Ethan was asked to. So we both decided a few weeks ago to do it on Election Day. Yeah. We both really didn't know where we were going to be polling at, campaigning at the polls. I was kind of hoping to be somewhere else, that we wouldn't be together.
But it ended up being together.
They ended up being together, and that was as interesting as
it could be.
As it could be. Because as you know, most things do turn into a competition. I think it was like that there. Every person that came up, you want to get your point across too. You want to get your flyers out. But there was a sense of, I don't know, competitiveness there.
I guess.
When I figured out I was at the Clerk County High School, I said, oh, crap. I said, he's going to be there. And sometimes there's not enough room for the both of us. But I think it ended up being a great day.
Yeah, it was.
We got there very early. Polls open at 6 o'clock, if you don't know. I think you were here. What time did you get?
I was here right at 6.
Right at 6. I think I got here like 6:05.
Yeah.
So we were here basically around the same time, and there was nobody here at the beginning.
Not really, no.
No. So we just stood around and talked for a few minutes, but after a while, people started coming in.
Yeah.
Coming in, and I think the first few people, you're just trying to get your mantra set up.
Yeah, and your rhythm.
Your rhythm, how to talk to people. And once you get into that rhythm, it's pretty smooth.
It is.
How did you figure out finding that rhythm?
Well, I have to give you some credit here because you would always introduce yourself with "Good morning" or "How are you today, sir?" Like, well, you're getting some pretty good reactions out of that, so I decided to copy it. But then, something that I started doing was I said, "Thank you for coming out and voting today, sir or ma'am or whatever." And they'd be like, "Thank you." And then I say, "While you're here, would you please consider re-electing Gerald Goad for Clerk of the Circuit Court?" And I thought it all flowed very naturally, and it brought up some good conversations, and I had a lot of people ask me more information about him as a candidate and him as a person. So I think it was organic enough that people felt welcome to ask questions, and it didn't seem over-rehearsed.
No, and I noticed you said that after they walked out, too.
I always thank them for voting.
Aftercare is important.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, after they would walk out of voting. They'd walk out of voting inside the building. They would walk out of the building after they voted, and I would say, "Thank you, sir, for voting today," or whatever, right? So yeah, let's look back a little bit to before we actually got to the poll sites. Yeah. What was your interaction with Mr. Hawks before you decided to work the polls?
Great, like always.
Well, sure, but of course, yeah. I mean,
it was every few weeks. I talked to him about campaigning for the polls, at the polls for him, a few months ago when we were talking. But you don't really plan those things out to get closer to the time. So
Right.
every few weeks I just check in and make sure everything was still on track. As the election got closer to about 5 days out, I was talking to him pretty much every day. Kind of just, he was telling me what he wants for that, what he wanted to do that day, where he wants people at. He was trying to schedule his different campaign workers to be at different polls, because
Right.
those of you who do not know, there is a lot of precincts in
Yes,
Carroll County, and with the clerk's office, you add 2 more.
Right.
So there's 19 separate precincts total. In Carroll County, it's not that big, but it's pretty spread out.
Yeah, it is.
So there's polling places all over the county. So those candidates are all the time, the entire day. Throughout the whole day, those candidates are going around to all those different precincts. So it's kind of everywhere all at once.
Right.
So they had to have a lot of people, a lot of bodies at the different places. I think my candidate, Phil, some places he had one person, some of the smaller places, and some places like Carroll County High School, there was multiple.
Yeah, and just a quick note about restrictions for campaign working.
Yes, that's...
Each candidate can have up to 3 people working the poll, advertising for them at once. Anything over is not allowed. And also there is a border, it's supposed to be 40 feet around the polling station, and no one advertising campaign material is allowed to step within it.
And I would like to get to that a little bit later too, because after you left, some interesting things happened with that.
Okay.
But yeah, and so just kind of moving people around the county, and also giving flyers to people.
Yes.
Because you're going to pass around a lot of flyers there.
Right.
And you don't really know how many people is going to show up to vote. So you have to have literally thousands of flyers.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of flyers. So we had a problem. We had a ton of flyers here, hundreds. We ended up running out.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, so trying to organize people to get places, yes, but when people run out of stuff, trying to get that stuff to them is also important. So I found that Phil throughout the whole day was running around the county, also supplying people with campaign flyers, or I think we had Republican ballots too, sample ballots.
You did.
Those,
I thought that was interesting.
that was interesting, and I thought it was I think it would be effective. Because
Oh, I'm sure it won you many
absolutely.
votes.
Because a lot of people, when they go to vote, they worry that they don't know really who to vote for.
Yeah, but
And I think that's sad. I mean, people need to educate themselves on who's running. But for those people, I think a sample ballot is going to be a great way to garner some votes.
Yeah, yeah, because they haven't researched into the candidates themselves, but they trust that their party, and that being their Republican Party candidate example ballots, they trust that to be a good source of information. Anyways, so you didn't meet up with Phil or anyone beforehand to collect material, did you?
No, I know you did.
Yes, that's what I asked.
What he did is he picked one of us that was at Clerk High School, and they gave them all the material. And once we got to the high school that morning, that was distributed among his campaign workers.
Okay. Yes, I see.
But the whole day, Phil was, the entire day, he was out
and about. Yeah.
He was out and about. And he contacted me probably every hour and make sure everything was all right.
Yeah. When we were both at the high school, before I left, he came by, and so did Sheriff Kemp, and we spoke with them.
Oh yeah, and that was one of my favorite parts of the day, is interacting with people that we know. Yes, people that are connected with the people that we know, like Sheriff Kemp's mother.
Yeah, right.
She was a wonderful lady, and really helped us out the entire day. But she came over and we talked to her for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just talked about the sheriff and the race and how important it was to get out and vote and campaign and stuff. So I think, yes, it was important to work at the polls, but it was also important to interact with the people at the polls.
Right, yeah.
And that's why you're there. You're there to push your
political agenda.
Yes, and get people to vote. But I also thought it was interesting to talk to people who were there campaigning for other candidates.
Right.
But yeah.
So I'll give a bit of my experience now. So I contacted Gerald a few weeks ago asking if he needed anyone to work the polls, and he was like, yes, of course, we always need people. So I was like, great, sounds good. Yeah, so a bit more about my experience. I contacted Gerald a few weeks ago, I want to say maybe beginning of October, and I asked him if he needed anyone to work the polls. And he said, yes, he did, that they always need people. And I was like, okay, great, sounds good. And he said he would loop back to me in a few weeks and we would talk. So he did, we spoke again, and he got my number, he sent it to his campaign manager, and his campaign manager reached out to me and introduced herself, introduced some of the rules that you have to follow when working the campaigns, like the 40-foot rule and the 3 people rule. And then she set up a time with me to collect the materials. So just to give a bit of time scale here, election day was on Tuesday, and that Saturday before is when I picked up the material. I want to say that was the 4th.
Where did you pick it up at?
She came to my house and dropped it off. I was actually going to go pick it up from her, but she had to go drop material off at, I believe, an elderly person's house that was helping out that couldn't really get out as easily. So she just came by my house at the same time. So it ended up working out. But I met her, shook her hand, we both talked for a little bit, and then she was on her way. So then nothing really happened up until election day. Like Luke said, we got there at 6, and we worked the polls, right? And then we both developed our different methods of talking to people, and they were pretty similar. And it was kind of funny. I was the only person working for Gerald at the high school when I was there, so that was from 6 to 10:30. And Phil had 3 people at the high school, so they just kind of spread out and hit everyone. I had to bounce around like a ping pong ball.
Well, Ethan, let's be honest here.
I admit Luke did the majority of the advertising.
99%.
Yes.
So it was basically me and Ethan there. The other 2 really helped later on in the day, but they were more almost gun shy.
Yeah, they were.
Me and Ethan were the main 2 people there early in the morning doing the campaigning.
Yeah, and just total disclosure, the other 2 are both our friends, and we know them personally at school.
Yeah.
So
it's,
and they would agree that they were a bit shy. So
yeah, absolutely.
We're not throwing any
but
shade.
That's just their temperament. So
yeah,
I mean, Ethan are more. I don't think Ethan's more extroverted, but I think in professional situations you're more comfortable.
Yeah.
And I am too.
I think the podcast has helped out a lot with that.
Absolutely.
And I think Professor McGaffey's public speaking class this summer helped out a lot.
Yeah. I learned a lot in his class. Mostly don't be late. But
yeah. But that's an inside joke.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Those of you who haven't taken the class might not know.
I imagine many of you have though, and you'll find it very amusing.
Yes, funny.
So yeah.
But yeah. So me and Ethan was there doing most of the stuff. And you left. What time did you leave?
I left right at about 10:30. I had to go pick up my material, and I stopped by one of the Woodlawn locations for a little bit, and then I had to go down to Mount Airy to do some stuff.
And those of you who wasn't there, yes, everybody was running against each other, but people at the campaigns were very nice.
Yes, sir.
There was no contention between campaign workers at all. So some more people come for Gerald. You know, because you said originally you were going to leave at like 9.
Yeah, but I ended up. So how Gerald's campaign did it was, you worked in 3.5-hour shifts.
Mm-hmm.
So you worked. The original plan was for me to work from 6 to 9:30, but I texted the campaign manager, Miss Kara Morin. I don't believe I mentioned her name earlier, and I asked, "Is anyone here from 9:30 to 11:30 or whatever?" Right? And she said no. So I was like, "Okay, that's fine. I'll just stay an extra hour." She said the next person was going to come at 11:30, and I couldn't stay that long because I had to go run down to Mount Airy for a little bit, but I stayed for as long as I could, and then I went and picked up more material because I ran out, right?
Yeah.
That's why I had to leave, if we didn't mention that. And I ran by Woodlawn for a few minutes, just checking on things, and then I went down to Mount Airy, but yeah.
What I thought was interesting is kind of funny. I know you told me you'd ran out of flyers, and you just left.
Yeah.
It was like 10 minutes, and I thought you ran to your car for something. So I called you.
I told you that I left.
Well, I probably wasn't paying too much attention.
Right.
Yeah. Now, the Woodlawn polling, that's at the senior center.
Yeah, and then there's another one too, but I don't know where it is.
Yeah, I think Hillsville had 3. It's interesting how they do the precincts.
Hillsville has 2, actually. Hillsville has Hillsville B and Hillsville C. Hillsville B is at the high school and Hillsville C is at the middle school.
I thought there was a Hillsville A.
There's not. Not according to the website I found, which is just odd to me.
I was pretty sure Hillsville had 3. One at the middle school, one at the high school, and then there was one out towards towards 100, I think.
Maybe, but when I was looking at the election results and it had results listed by precinct, I only saw Hillsville B and C. I never saw in Hillsville A. Then I'll pull it up here so we can see. View stats for each precinct. So Mount Bethel, St. Paul, Lambsburg, Fancy Gap, Hillsville B, Laurel Fork, Glazeboro, Hillsville C, Saladas, Duxbury, Oakland, Woodlawn D, Vaughn, Gladeville, Woodlawn E, Lowell, and Provisionals. See, so we don't have in Hillsville A, which is strange to me.
Because when they were talking later that night, I thought there was 3 Hillsville. I should know because we followed the precincts as they came in.
Yes, from 7:30 when they start coming in all the way to 9:30.
Yeah, and this is a great tool. There's 2 different websites that are great. There's the Virginia Department of Elections.
Mm-hmm.
You can follow the official race. It's more official than other sources. It's not confirmed yet, but it's through the state, and you can actively watch the polls precinct by precinct as the results come in, which is great, but it is very stressful. There's another website called VPAP, and it's good too. It's not as in-depth as the Department of Elections.
Yeah, and it was having issues for me when I tried it.
I think it crashed that night.
It may have. That
for a
makes
while,
sense.
which is for an election
Not-
tracking site.
not
crashing
ideal.
Election night, not very ideal for them. But it was interesting to compare those 2 sites throughout the evening.
Yeah.
But those were great tools.
Yeah.
Again.
I got to the point where I just stopped looking at VPAP, which is the Virginia Public Access Project, for anyone wondering. And I just looked at the Department of Election site, and it stayed stable the entire night, which is impressive.
Yeah. So yeah, Ethan leaves. I knew you had stuff to do later in the day. I wasn't planning on staying as long as I did either. I thought I was going to leave at about 11 too.
Mm-hmm.
But so one of our campaign people left, and it was just me and another girl campaigning there. So we stayed till probably 2.
Yeah.
2. From about 11 to 2, there was not many people coming through.
Yeah.
From about 1:30 to 2, you started picking up again as you get towards the afternoon and evening. Mm-hmm. But about lunchtime, I bet there was an hour where not 2 people came.
Wow, yeah.
But, so that was, there's always going to be that lull. But I think if you stay till 4, 5, 6 o'clock when people get off of work,
It would have been
really
massive,
starts to pick up again.
Because that's when my parents went. They went after they got off work instead of before they started working. So.
And just kind of a little disclaimer here, how the turnout works for each of the different elections. Normally, you're every 2 years, your midterm elections. Mm-hmm. There's a pretty big turnout. You're voting for Congress and some different local stuff. And then you have your off years.
Yeah.
The year before the presidential elections is a large amount of local stuff, but it's not that heavy-hitting, media-heavy campaigns. So the turnout is going to be less. I think the turnout from this one was
6,800 voters, and there's 21,000 registered voters in the county.
Yeah.
So it's pretty low.
Pretty low.
But what can you do about it, right?
And normally the year after the presidential election, too, is low turnout. Mm-hmm. That's when the governor race for Virginia happens. Mm-hmm. So Virginia is kind of unique in the standing that the year after the presidential election, there is some pretty good turnout.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Of course, the big one's going to be
the presidential election.
But,
which is kind of amusing because you always hear the saying, if you want your vote to really matter, vote in your local elections. Yeah. But people don't vote in their local elections; they vote in their.
And local elections are extremely important.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll affect your life
immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. So go vote local. Mm-hmm. That is extremely important. But I mean, I was kind of disappointed too, because a lot of people didn't. Right. And that's a given. But some people didn't even know it was election day.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
Shocking.
Because they always try to really push that hard, leading up to election day.
Yeah.
But I thought the turnout at the high school was great. I think by the end of the day we had between 500 and 600 people come.
Yeah, something like that.
Which was it's one of the larger precincts. That's why there were so many people, I think, dedicated to working it that day. But yeah, the day goes by great. It's a little bit off about midday, but I leave about 2 o'clock because really there wasn't much going on, and we had to do some schoolwork stuff before that evening, because that evening nothing's going to get done.
Yeah. So just a bit of background, Luke mentioned schoolwork. We didn't have to go to school physically that day, but we did have virtual work. So that could vary anything between signing a little Google form and not really doing anything, and doing an hour's worth of work for one of your math classes. So it really just depends on who your teacher was, but they were all supposed to assign an hour's worth of schoolwork.
Yeah, I heard later they really pushed minimizing that.
Yeah.
As much as possible. The reason why they did that is so we could have a longer Thanksgiving break.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We were going to get out at 1 o'clock that Wednesday. We went virtual. We don't have to go that Wednesday at all.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty neat.
It is neat, but it is what it is. So we did have to do some schoolwork that day. So I was going to stay till 5, 6 o'clock. By that point, I already been there for 8 hours.
Yeah.
I said,
let's go home.
Let's go home.
We've participated in democracy today.
Yeah, but I think it would have been fine to stay for the rest of it.
Right. Yeah. But anyways, so we've talked about working the campaigns themselves.
Yeah.
Afterwards, we both attended victory parties.
Or campaign parties.
Right. One ended up being a victory party, though. Victory parties hosted by each respective candidate. I, of course, went to Mr. Gerald Goad's party, which was at Contenders, and you went to
Phil Hawks' party, which is at the Hampton Inn ballroom.
So I'll talk about mine a little bit. So when I met with Miss Kara Morin that Saturday, she gave me a bag full of stuff, all of the campaign material, water bottles, some snacks, whatever, right? It also contained a little postcard, a party invitation, I guess, and it said that there was an election party going on at 6:30, election night, and yeah, I was like, okay, cool, that sounds great. I went, got there about 6:30, not a whole lot of people were there yet, because people were still coming back from the polls, you know. So I waited a few minutes, more people were coming rolling in, and at like 7, everyone's like, well, where's Gerald, right? And it turns out the clerk on election night has to be the one to send out the information, send out poll numbers to different media sources, like the Virginia Department of Elections or the Virginia Public Access Project. We didn't realize at the time, or I didn't at least, but that is one of the duties of the clerk, and it must be so nerve-wracking to be in that position where you have to, you're seeing firsthand if you're gonna be reelected or not. But anyway, so it's like 7, and that goes around, so we all realize why Gerald isn't there yet. And we're just talking, we're eating. I met one of Gerald's cousins. I met who I believe to be were his parents. I met some of his friends. There was a lot of people there. The mayor of Hillsville was there. The lawyer John McGrady was there. Ron Adrian Horton was there. There was a great turnout of people. So we eat, we talk, and then finally the results start rolling in. And I remember Glegsburg was the first, and it was a dead tie, 194 to 194. Yeah.
I said this is gonna be.
It's gonna be a really quick race. So then other precincts started rolling in, and I have some screenshots of them, but
you don't have to go through all of them, but they were very close.
They were very, very close.
The entire night. And did Gerald ever come to the party?
He did. So Glegsburg rolled in first, and then a few others rolled in, and then it was tied again at 594. So 594, and at that point everyone was going crazy at the party because like, wow, it's really close. So more and more roll in, and it bounces between Phil being up by 100, Joe being up by 100, them being apart by 6, and being apart by 17, by 23. It was just all over the place, and every time a precinct was coming, it was like, ooh, ah, ooh, ah.
Yeah. And I think by the end of it, when all precincts reported, Phil was up by 8.
7, I believe it was 7.
I think it was because of 8 because he was down by 6, just Carroll County, but if you put in Galax too, he was up by 8.
I'm not sure.
So it was
back and forth
right there.
Yeah. And
single digits support.
What made it even crazier was Mayor Crowder was on the phone with someone at the registrar's office, and we got the information before it was released to Virginia Department of Elections. So that was really cool to see, and hearing before it came out on the website what was happening. So yeah. And then at, I want to say 8:30 or so, Mr. Gerald Goad came, and he gave a little speech, said he was very thankful to be there. He said that no matter what, he was proud that he ran a clean election, a clean campaign, win or lose, and that he's very thankful to have the opportunity to work as clerk for the past 8 years, and just that type of thing. He was very nice. Came around and shook everyone's hand, talked to them for a little bit. Yeah. So then by then it was around 9 o'clock, and sadly Contenders was closing, so we all had to leave. But we stuck around and talked a little bit outside, and then we all headed home. And at that point, all the precincts that came in, and Gerald was up by just a few votes, I think. No, he was down by just a few votes.
Yeah.
It was by around 100, I think. But then the early ballots and the absentee ballots were being counted.
Yeah, so at that point, the race is extremely close, like Ethan said.
Yeah.
But there was this really big wild card with absentee ballots.
Yeah.
Like it swung it either way, and it ended up swinging in Gerald's favor by
6 votes. What? No.
By a very small margin. It was however little, 100 votes.
Yeah. I have this picture. 6 votes. No, so Gerald was up by 6 votes before the absentee ballots were counted.
In Carroll. That's not including Galax.
It does include Galax.
No. No, we had this problem that night too. That's Carroll County, Galax City. But there's also another Carroll County, Galax City that we did the math. It was not included in that. We tallied up all the precinct numbers, and then we tallied up the Galax precinct numbers.
Okay.
He was up by 8 right there, but that really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because by that point, the absentee votes had not been counted.
Right.
And there was a large number of absentee
Yes.
votes. So Gerald ended up winning by a little over 100 votes, which is an election. It's tantalizingly close.
Yeah. And here's the final count here. We have BP Philhawks, 3,816, and then Gerald R. Goad as 3,996. For those who can't do math, it's 180 votes.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, very small margin. That could be decided by people showing up at the polls or not.
Yeah.
So, this is probably one of the closest local elections I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And there's been much closer, but still, in the matter of elections, that was extremely close. So that was disappointing, but we had also had a party that night too.
Yeah.
At the ballroom
So
at the
tell us
Hampton
about
Inn.
that.
So I called Ethan about 6:15. Our party was supposed to start at 6. I thought that's a little bit early.
Yeah, ours started at 6:30, and I really thought that was early because, the polls don't close till 7.
Yeah. So I get there, and there's all this food and stuff, but nobody's there yet. So I said, okay. I said, that makes sense. So about 6:30, people did start rolling in. And there were a lot of people that I knew there personally, from different family members to friends of ours, including people that we've had on the podcast. Mr. Ronnie Collins was there, which he was a great help the entire evening. I really enjoyed talking to him, as always. He was more of a common presence to me than anything that night. And he knows what he's talking about, too.
Right.
So, which was great. So the food was great. There was probably, how many people do you think was at your party?
I don't know. Maybe 75, 80?
That was probably 40, 45 people at this party.
There were a lot of families there at ours. We filled up Contenders.
So like families, like children and stuff too, or?
Families of people who worked the polls, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there was a good amount of people that showed up to ours too, and I knew most of them.
Yeah.
Which was nice. So it was more of it wasn't awkward whatsoever.
Yeah, no, mine wasn't awkward at all.
No, Phil was there. He gave a nice speech, thanking everybody for helping. He really appreciated it. It was great. Prayed over the food. We ate. The food was amazing. We had it brought in, different sandwich stuff brought in. It was great. And then we just watched the results roll in. It was tense.
Yes.
Because it was back and forth. And really, people started leaving as they thought the absentee votes wouldn't come in till the next day.
Right.
That's what everybody was thinking at that time. And it is raining now, so I hope you like some white noise in the background. It'll be more relaxing. But we did figure out, most people left, and then about 15 minutes later, the results did come in, and the election was decided. everybody was disappointed, but you accepted that the entire evening because it was so close. It wasn't like everybody was up,
right,
and then the results came in, and it was a landslide. No, it was close the entire evening. So you said, you know what, this can go either way, and that's what Phil was saying to everybody, saying, especially after that first prank scene came in, it was
194, 194.
He said, this is going to be close, and
that really set the tone for the whole night.
It did, but I think everybody knew it was going to be close from the very beginning. Me and Ethan said that morning, 12 hours earlier when we were at the polls, because it's like every single person that came in, it was
a flip-flop.
Flip-flop. Yeah. I said, oh God, this is going to be...
Just a side note, Gerald did end up winning the poll that we were at, so I don't want to take credit for that.
But Hillsville's more... You have different areas for different candidates.
Yeah.
Hillsville tends to vote in more of that direction.
Sure. Yeah.
Like Lambsburg and down in Kane and stuff.
He won.
It went by...
Phil, yes, by a lot. And
by a lot.
Sylvatus, he did pretty well at as well.
Yeah, Galax was more in Phil's favor. So you can really break down by area, where that candidate's popular at, based off really where they work, where they live, where they grew up, where they have family. And in a local election, it's crazy to kind of see that, because in a presidential election or somewhere much, or in a campaign that's much bigger, you won't have that clear-cut effect on the different precincts. So yeah, Phil's party was great. It would have been much better if we had won, but I think Phil would have done a great job with the clerk of court. Gerald's done a fine job as well. We know both individuals.
Yes.
We think highly of both individuals. I am partial.
And I am as well, but we aim to keep the podcast as a non-partial source.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean you can't respect the men involved too.
Yes.
Because both of them's done really good by us, and I think I can speak for both me and Ethan. I'd like to thank both candidates.
Yes.
Both Phil and Gerald.
Yes, and I believe no matter who would have won, they would have done a fine job, and they would have ran the clerk of court position as well as they could have.
Both were very qualified.
Yes.
And what I thought was interesting too, Ethan, I think I counted it up. We've interviewed 7 people on the ballot.
Yeah,
this past,
sounds about right. And that's exciting.
It was exciting to look at the ballot and realize...
So yeah, it is interesting to see how many people on the ballot that we
actually
interviewed.
So looking at the ballot, I'm like, heck, I know most of these people.
It really made me feel like we participated in democracy for this election, because we've interviewed those candidates, and we personally knew who we wanted to win, who we didn't want to win, right? And we hope that we provided that information to people who listened.
Not that who we didn't want to win.
But who we prefer to win.
Who we prefer to win, yes, because I think everybody that we've interviewed has been great to us.
They'd be fine.
They've done a great job in office, and even not in office.
Right. In their personal lives.
Yeah. Or in their campaigns. So yeah, all these candidates were great, and we knew most of them, so that was a plus too. Earlier in the day, though, we did see Miss Quessenberry and Miss Gates on the ballot. They were running for different elections, one against Ren Williams and one against Bill Stanley. I think it's Virginia State Senate election against Bill Stanley.
Yes.
And House delegates against Mr. Ren Williams. We hadn't interviewed Mr. Bill Stanley. I would love to.
Yes.
But we have interviewed Mr. Williams, or Delegate Williams, and
Patty
Quessenberry and Renee Gates. So we have interviewed those 3 individuals. All of them have been great.
Yes.
Ethan asked, one of the girls with us asked what we thought the margins were going to be between the Democratic and Republican candidates for the state races.
Yeah.
And then Ethan both said about 20%.
And that ended up being true. Yeah. And there was also an independent who ran in the state delegate election, which I didn't really know he was running, but we didn't get a chance to interview him. I think that would have been a really interesting interview.
Yeah.
But he got, I'm going to say, about 6% of the vote. So.
Which is more than I thought he would garner.
Yeah.
That was great. Overall, it was a great day. That's the first time I've ever worked the polls. I think next election, the primaries, I want to actually work for the election.
Right. Yeah.
Election. Helping people not register, but get signed in and count the votes at the end of the day.
I would like to do that as well, but I believe you have to be 18 to do it, so I won't be able to do that in the primaries. I'll have to wait until the next.
Yeah, because you have to take a class. But for the presidential elections, I think we both can.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to both do that would be a really cool experience, because it's always like outside the building.
That would be neat.
You have to go inside into the actual election process.
Yeah. And also, a side note, this was a neat experience. There were a few voters throughout the day who were disabled and they couldn't really exit their vehicle, so they would park on the curb, and someone would come out to them with a ballot so that they could vote from the curb. And it's a pretty similar process. They show their ID, get in, all that, and then they vote. And I thought that was neat that we're able to offer that service to people who otherwise would not be able to vote.
Yeah, but yeah, I really enjoyed my time there that day.
Yeah.
And it does feel like you're a part of democracy.
Right.
That you're part of the system. And it's really cool to see people come out and vote. And most people were really nice. There were some outliers.
Right.
There's always going to be. Some people were salty about the whole political system.
Yes.
Almost, which I didn't expect to get that day, but I probably should have.
Yeah.
And some people just don't want to be talked to.
That's fine.
And that's perfectly all right, because I can see how being, you don't really know what about that person's there and then their intentions, and sometimes it seems a little bit pushy. That's your job being there.
Yeah. I think as the day got on, we got better at identifying who didn't want to be talked to.
Yes, there's some people you can just tell, and you just said hello to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people, I think, what I really did is saying hello, sir, or hello, ma'am, how are you?
It helped.
Their reaction to that lets you know how much you can campaign to them.
Right. Yes.
If it was, I'm doing great, how are you? Then you feel much more comfortable kind of pushing it a little bit more.
And then if they're like, fine, then okay, maybe you should leave them alone.
I'm like, okay, well, sir, you have a nice day. Or that type of thing.
And then some people would just wave you off after you're approaching them, and then you're like, okay, that's fine. Have a good day, sir, or
I
whatever.
think I learned more about political science working the polls that day than I have in my entire course this quarter.
Yeah.
So actually being at the polls, learning about it was interesting. I said earlier, I talked a little bit more about the distances you have to be away from the entrances.
Okay, yeah.
You know that there was one side door that everybody was supposed to go into, and there was like this marker drew around that. So we could stay right in front of the other set of doors, right? Mm-hmm. But they came out about 1 o'clock and told us that we had to move.
Okay.
From all the doors.
Okay.
And it made some people a little bit angry. The guy said he's just doing his job, I guess, but it didn't really.
Sure.
Because we had been there for 7 hours at that point.
Yeah.
We weren't hurting anything at all. But I understand there is rules, and I think there was a mix-up when they were drawing the tape, he said. So he made us move, so we went and stood near the flag, near the other flagpole. Okay. Really. But yeah, the 40 feet rule was enforced.
Okay. I was under the impression that it was 40 feet away from the machines themselves, but apparently from the entrances.
Because the machines were
way back there.
Yeah, so it's the entrance.
Did you have a chance to go in the building?
Yeah, to use the bathroom.
Okay.
But if you go into the building, I have to take off all my my campaign stuff.
Yeah.
So luckily, I wore a red shirt, of course, but it was not connected to the Republican Party whatsoever. It was like a different school shirt basically. So I just had my campaign shirt on, my jacket, and I just took that off.
Right. Yeah.
And was able to go into the building and use the bathroom. There was nothing in the hallways. Yeah. It was all centered in the cafeteria. Did you ever go into the building?
When we had a disabled person, when we had a disabled gentleman pull up on the curb, I went in there and notified the election staff that there was someone who needed to vote on the curb. So I got to go in there and I looked around for a second, and yeah.
But yeah, and I thought that was really interesting too. How they do that is curbside voting.
Yeah.
We never campaigned to those people.
Yeah.
Of course, because it's like that's where they're voting. It's almost like they're in the booth right there.
Right.
So we never went up and campaigned to those individuals. But there were a few people that did that throughout the day.
And it was interesting. It was interesting. There were some people who had to use walkers or were in wheelchairs, but they chose to go in the building anyway when they could have. curbside voted,
Yeah.
and a lot of them had difficulty getting up the step.
And I thought that was important too, to see, because those people really care about getting out and voting.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah.
And they want to vote in person. And I think voting in person is important. I always want people to vote in person because I think it's going out and being a part of the system. But I do understand how, for some people it would be much easier, and people who have health issues not to get out around that many people.
Right.
So yeah, I thought the curbside voting was a great addition this year.
It was also really cool to see parents bringing their kids with them to vote.
Yeah.
That was neat. I saw one family of 4 children that came and voted, and part of my little spiel was, "Thank you for bringing your kids out to see you vote today." And they were like, "Of course, I wouldn't have them miss it for the world."
Yeah, and with the off years, I hate saying off year, but for most people it is.
Yeah.
During the presidential election, you see a lot more people bringing their children to come and vote with them.
Yeah.
Because it's more, the presidential election is a national and cultural event.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And when you think of voting, many people only think of
voting for president.
Yeah. And this is something interesting, and I didn't realize they did this, but I'm in a few online communities and across Virginia, and I'm in one for Richmond. Apparently in Richmond, they vote on specific legislature. So when you went to the polls and you voted for your candidates, you not only voted for state delegate or whoever, you also voted on specific issues that were being faced.
I mean, that's not all the time, though. That's just some specific.
I didn't realize that they did that. The one specifically in Richmond, it was on whether or not to build a casino in Richmond, and the answer ended up being a resounding no. But I just thought that was interesting. I didn't realize that sort of thing could even be on ballots.
And you see that in the national election, too. I mean, sometimes constitutional amendments are proposed that way.
I didn't realize that.
We don't live in a direct democracy, we live in a representative democracy, but some issues if decided on can be a direct from the people. And I think if it's important enough, I see that as a win.
Yeah, I really prefer that.
And it can't be like that for everything.
Of course.
You think, Section C of Code,
Of course.
Talking about some random seatbelt rule. You can't do that for everything because in a country this size, so many issues, it would be just ridiculous. But some issues that are so important, I see it as absolutely let the people decide themselves.
Right. I think building a casino in a city maybe is one of those decisions. I don't know.
Locally, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to kind of wrap it up here, it was a great experience for both me and Ethan.
Yeah.
I definitely want to get involved in the election system.
For sure.
From here on out.
Yeah.
Ethan, do you have anything to say to wrap it up?
Yeah, I would just like to congratulate all the candidates that won their elections, and even those who didn't, for having good campaigns. I never saw or heard of anything that was dirty or ugly. No. They were all very professional, and they just all ran great campaigns. Specifically, I would like to congratulate the ones we've had on the podcast because they're the most near and dear to us. Sheriff Kemp, Kevin A. Kemp, Mr. Vin Williams, Roger Brooks, Commonwealth Attorney, yes. Of course, Mr. Gerald Goad,
Mr. Phil
Hawks, Miss Patty Crunsbury, Mr. Renee Gates. Who else?
Am I missing anybody else?
I think that might have been it, but yeah, it was. Let's check before.
Just to make sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, specifically to our podcast alumni.
Yeah.
They've done a lot for us, and we mentioned this earlier, but I think it's important to say again. Even though some of them won, some of them lost, they all went out there. They were part of the system. Yeah. That's extremely important.
That is incredibly important, and it doesn't look like we missed anyone, but
nope. Yeah. All right, so thank you all for listening, and most importantly, if you can, always get out and vote.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.